Hello and welcome to You Asked For It. I'm Belinda Kennedy and I'll be sitting in for Ann Page. Today we have a very special guest. This is Peter Alexander. Nice to see you, Peter.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
So, Peter, you're an artist, singer, songwriter, educator.
Jack of all trades.
Yes, many. You live art, pretty much.
I try. Yeah, I try to. It's the thing that's meaningful in my life. I mean, we all have to work and we have to make a living, but I live for my art, I guess you could say.
Excellent. And you started playing the piano when you were 4.
My mother was a piano teacher and my father was a concert cellist. He played with the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra. And so they had very high aspirations for all of their children. I was the youngest of 5, and I guess they got through with most of their experiments with my older siblings. But they figured that by the time I was 4, I was ready for piano.
Wow.
So I studied piano for a number of years until my older brother turned me on to Buddy Holly and Elvis Presley, at which point I knew I wanted to play the guitar. But I told my parents that I wanted to play classical guitar because I knew they would never go for me playing rock and roll.
Right.
So I agreed to take classical guitar lessons, which I did. I studied with the head of the guitar department from Peabody Conservatory. But, and I could still play a few classical things, but I could never grow fingernails, so I could never really play classical guitar the way it needs to be played. But with a flat pick, I can play just fine.
Nice,
So,
yeah.
You know, all my rock and roll and folk music stylings are pretty much self-taught. But in the classical, I was actually quite well trained.
Have there been any other influences in your life that have turned you in certain directions one way or another, like turning points?
Well, I was quite lucky. I was surrounded by amazing musicians. You know, I didn't seek them out, and I can't take any credit for it. But I really was surrounded by incredible musicians. At the age of 8, my parents got me a position in the junior choir of the National Cathedral Choir in Washington, D.C. And during that time, of course, we'd been coming to Maine. My grandfather built a log cabin out in Phippsburg in 1925. So we have 2 generations, 3 generations of family connection. And now we're getting into 6 generations of family connection with this area. But starting with a junior choir at the age of 8, and then I graduated to the senior choir at the age of 9, and I was studying under some of the best musicians in the nation. I mean, incredible musicians. So I was taught somewhat, and I would say, in a classical style of singing, which I rebelled from immediately, as you'll tell, as soon as I start singing here. But yeah, I had a lot of amazing influences in that realm, and I had a very good education. I was very lucky. I got into, as a choir boy, I got into a private school in Washington, D.C. that was built specifically for the choir boys.
Now, at any point, did you ever think to yourself, I want to do something else? I want to be an accountant or anything like that? Or you just always knew that it was music?
I have done so many things, sometimes out of necessity, sometimes just following my passion, but I knew at quite a young age that I wanted to do music and art. And all through high school, the 2 things that completely consumed me were the art room. I did watercolors and acrylics, and I just loved to paint. And every spare moment I spent in the art room. And the other part was music. And I was doing all kinds of music. I was singing in the choir, I sang in a glee club, and then I sang in folk bands, and I started rock and roll bands. And after 1 year in college, I started a rock and roll band, figuring I can always go back to college, which I did. Eventually, I went back and got a master's degree, ultimately, about 15 years ago. But in environmental studies, and that's another passion of mine. I care very deeply about the environment, and I've done a lot of work, in fact, here in Maine, for trying to design, working with state and federal agencies. We designed actually a comprehensive restoration strategy for the entire watershed of the Gulf of Maine.
Excellent.
So it's a $20 billion plan, which we then tried to start, getting Congress to take a look at. But things had changed in Congress by the time we got the plan published, and there's no more spending going to happen, although it desperately needs to be done.
Absolutely.
Most of the problems with the Gulf of Maine are infrastructure problems that have to do with culverts being undersized so fish can't get up into the dams blocking fish flows, sewage overflows in the big cities. Right here in Bath, we have combined sewage overflows, although they've remediated a lot of it, but still there's, in heavy rainstorms, you sometimes will get raw sewage flowing right out into the river.
Wow.
Those sorts of problems we addressed.
Yeah, well, that's
So that's
good.
what I did with my environmental studies.
Nice. Now, you were originally from D.C.
I tell people I grew up in Maine but spent my school year in Washington, D.C.
I see.
That gets me about 5 seconds into the conversation.
Yeah, you're truly a son of Maine. Like, you love it here, and it shows in
I
your
do.
music and in the community outreach that you have, the event planning that you do on the waterfront. Let's talk about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I consider myself quite lucky. I've fallen into some really wonderful things, and I've been working with the Chocolate Church for the last 3 or 4 years, helping book concert series. I booked the 2 years. I booked the Waterfront concert series. I believe I'll be booking it this year, at least having a significant input into it. I designed they did a Friday night, an art walk concert series for a while, last couple of years. And then this year we're doing the Kill the Chill winter concert series. And it's either on a Friday or a Saturday night during the winter. So yeah, I've had a lot of fun doing that and getting to know, and writing for the Coastal Journal has given me an opportunity to get to know lots and lots and lots of musicians and venues as well, all up and down the mid-coast.
That's how I was going to ask you how you select and how so that's obviously how you do it. You get to interview people, write about them, and then...
I generally, I don't like writing reviews. I can be very critical, and I don't want to be critical. I don't want to tell people what they've done wrong unless they're coming to me for guitar lessons. I'm happy to tell them how to fix what they're doing wrong. But so I like to write previews of up-and-coming concerts, and I like to focus on local musicians for the most part. And I like to focus on venues too. And there are some fantastic artists coming up through the ladder here. And some of them are, I mean, there's a lot in Portland, and Hallowell has a lot of great musicians, and Bath has a huge supply of great musicians.
Yeah.
So it's fun to write about them and to be able to say nice things about people I admire.
You're really good at bringing people together. And
I try to.
yeah, that's nice. So we've got a couple of other things here. We've got a book that you published in '96 of photographs.
I was living in New Mexico at the time. I hadn't quite come to my senses and moved to Maine, which I did 10 years after that. But in 1996, I was living in New Mexico, and I was so struck by the landscape. It's such an amazing expanse, the land, the mountains, the sagebrush, the pinyon, and it used to be ocean. And sometimes you look out over the high desert there, north of Taos, where I was, up on by the Colorado border, and honestly, it looks like you're looking out over the Casco Bay. It's incredible. So I was very taken with it, and I had taken up watercolors again, and I went around documenting all the things that I wanted to paint. And after thousands of photographs, a monkey could have done it ultimately, but I had enough that I wanted to put them into a context that would make a statement about the land and how beautiful it was and how special the light is out there, so remarkable. And so I created this little book, which is called it Gifts from the Land and the Light. And the one thing I've never been very good at is marketing my own stuff. And
Yeah,
so I tried to get into marketing, and I had a very difficult time. But I did get lucky in that in New Mexico, which is a relatively small state, it's like Maine that way. I mean, you can walk down the street and meet your senator and your state representative. Or I ran into a former Secretary of the Interior, Stuart Udall, and when he got a hold of this book, he bought dozens and dozens and dozens of them and wrote me one of the nicest things anybody's ever said about me.
That's encouraging.
So that's nice. if somebody else would just talk like that, maybe I'd sell a few of them. But
Well, you did write another book.
I've actually written several other books, and there's one that's about what you have in your hand is.
Yeah.
This is the latest issue, the April issue, I should say, of the Maine Boats, Homes, and Harbors magazine. And they published an excerpt, one of the chapters from my soon-to-be published book, the book is called The Stone from Halfway Rock.
Yes.
And it's a bunch of stories about my childhood growing up on Sheep Island off Cundy's Harbor. It was pretty amazing. I mean, we spent 3 months of the year with no electricity, no running water, no telephones, no cars, no nothing, out on the island. And kerosene lamps, carrying ice, you know, going up to Cundy's Harbor.
Everybody should do that at least once in their life.
Oh, it was so great. And you know, kids these days, your cell phones and your tablets and all your electronic games and stuff. We had none of that, nothing.
Yeah.
And so you learn how to entertain yourself, and as a result, you learn all kinds of stuff about the land, and you learn about boats, and you learn about outboard motors. And I know I found them either with my sailboat or with an oar or with a bow of a boat, every rock,
Right, right.
every reef in the New Meadows River. So that was such a valuable experience, and I tried to share that with this book I've written, The Stone from Halfway Rock, which is Polar Bear and Company is publishing it, and it should be, by the time it airs, it may actually be out.
Yes.
And this issue, they excerpted one of the chapters, which is about a boat builder in Sebasco named Charlie Gooms, who my mother commissioned in 1955 or 56 to build a sailboat for her. And we still have that boat.
That's awesome.
And it just was restored, and it was really, really nice. And they did a very nice job, the way they presented the story in the magazine. So
That's great.
Pretty happy with that. And then I have a rock and roll band. So
yeah, let's.
that's the older one.
Okay.
The Promised Land CD, but
And then
this one just came out this year, and
Hollow Body Electric.
Hollow
now I
Body.
did ask you what that meant, and I wonder if there's probably other people that want to know what that means too.
This didn't start off as an electric guitar, but I put an electric pickup in it. It's actually it's an acoustic pickup that attaches underneath a bridge. Carter Ruff from Subterranean Music Works right here in Bath is really a master craftsman. Wow. And he put it in fact, he's put it in all my acoustic guitars. And so this has become an electric guitar. So I call it Hollow Body Electric. And
that's nice. I like it.
We call it the Hollow Body Electric Band because I actually play a lot of rock and roll on this guitar, and it's an unusual approach to playing rock and roll.
Excellent. Well, why don't would you play something for us?
Oh,
and then we'll
really?
talk.
Do I have to?
Please. And then we'll talk some more after you play.
Where were you last night when we were dreaming? Where were you as we walked hand in hand? We were walking down a garden path. I was thinking we're alone at last. I could feel the touch of your skin. Where were you last night as I was sleeping? I could feel you sleeping there by me. We were lying beneath a shady tree. All around were the flowers and bees. I could smell the fragrance of your skin. I could live this dream forever if you could live it with me too. All our friends are looking on, wondering what's going on. I wish we could tell them it's a dream that has come true. So many things I don't understand between a woman and her man. Why so much love always comes with heartache too. Well, were you last night as I was sleeping? Where were you when I awoke alone? I was thinking of the tears I shed, knowing how the dancers all got head, and why you had to sleep in your own home. Wish I could live this dream forever, and have you live it there with me. We'd be walking down a garden path and thank God we're alone at last. I could taste the sweetness of your breathing. We'd be lying beneath a shady tree. All around are the flowers and bees, and we'd never have to wake up from this dreaming. Where were you last night as I was dreaming?
That was beautiful. Thank you. It just took me somewhere completely another place. It was just, that's great.
Thank you so much.
Wow. So you're an educator. You give lessons?
I do. I have a studio right around the corner from here on Center Street, right across from May's Cafe.
Nice.
I have a barn which we've converted into a music studio, and I give guitar lessons there. And I love to teach. I like to take, well, adults or kids, I don't care. I mean, I like to take people from where they are, because I don't have a teaching technique, I wouldn't say. I haven't written books or anything like that. But I do have a knack for being able to see where a little bit of adjustment can make a huge difference in how somebody plays. And approach it not just from the technical side, but from the artistic side. And a lot of times that means taking things out.
Right, and that reminds me of the question I asked you about when you paint and you're using a different medium and it's a visual medium. I've often wondered the translation from, you can see what you're doing, juxtaposition, color, movement. How does that translate to the guitar?
Well, I can translate it back and forth, especially because of watercolors.
Yeah.
One of the things I enjoy most about watercolors, with oil paints, if you make a mistake, you scrape the oil off, you put a different color on, you let it dry, you do whatever you want, and you can paint over. You can take a whole canvas and paint over it. And if the paint is opaque enough, you have a whole new image and you don't have to worry about what went down first. With watercolors, you don't have that option. What you put down stays, and that's sort of the way it is with music. When you play music, if you play a wrong note, it's there. It doesn't go away. And with art, if you put down a wrong brushstroke, you're just kind of stuck with it.
Right.
So with both art and music, at least art the way I try to practice it, with watercolors anyway, it's really about eliminating the things that you don't need. A lot of times when people start playing the guitar, they'll play a lot of extra stuff because they're a little nervous. They'll just blast away on the guitar, and they're not, as opposed to. So that's thoughtful. I'm thinking about every note I'm playing, and I'm feeling the note and letting it ring, as opposed to just nervously smothering it and playing the next note, or worried about how I'm going to get to the next note or what the next note's going to be even. And that's, a lot of people, when they get stuck in the technical side of things, I know often a lot of guitar players who are like way better than I am technically. But if they would just play about 1/3 as many notes and be more thoughtful about what notes they're playing, and let their technique be a channel, as it were, for the artistry and what they're trying to say musically, it would be so much more fun to listen to them. You know,
editing out the noise, and I think that
Yeah.
takes confidence, don't you think?
And well, you know what? In some ways, it is a huge risk. It takes, because you put yourself out there and you play this note, and how long are you willing to let it ring and die, and then the silence set in before you play the next one? So. What risks are you willing to take? And especially with guitar, you're improvising all the time. And in watercolors, in a way, you're improvising all the time too. I mean, you don't exactly know what's going to come out when you put that brush stroke down.
You know what it feels like to me? That you're working with the positive and negative space.
Yes.
And much like your photographs that we talked about.
In visual terms, that's very much what it is. And in the music, the silence in the music is just as important as the notes you play. See, there's lots of moments of complete silence in there, maybe only a fraction of a second, but they add punctuation, and they add drive, and they add energy and tension. You don't want to fill up every tiny bit of the soundscape, just like you don't want to fill up every bit of the landscape or the seascape, wherever you are. You need
a place to rest.
Well, and all that white in that boat, that's not where I painted, that's where I didn't paint.
Right.
And you, as an artist, you know that. And I particularly like the mooring ball back there. That's, I think, one of the greatest achievements of my painting career. Is how to make a mooring ball actually look like a mooring ball using negative space.
Right.
And it's what you don't paint that is just as important as what you do paint.
And the weight of it, and how things can come forward or balance, or, you know, a large part of it in the front and then smaller elements. So I'm thinking about a heavy note and then a lighter note or a sharp note.
Well,
I like a dance.
Very much of a parallel between the music and the art. And the writing, too, for that matter.
And when you write, do you know the beginning, the middle, and the end? Or do you start with something and is it organic, and then it becomes, like, you don't know where you're going with it?
With my column, when I write my weekly column for the Coastal Journal, the music column, which shows up every week, I usually know pretty much what I'm going to write about, but I don't know the details. And I usually start with an upcoming performance. Okay, so-and-so is going to be playing at such and such a venue at such and such a time. Or I might say there's 5 different events coming up this weekend. Sometimes I do that. So I know technically what I'm going to write about. I know the details.
Right.
But then I go and do a lot of research. And I like to listen to the music, and I like to read about the performers and get to know them a little bit. Oftentimes I'll interview them, which is another bonus of this job. I get to interview some pretty amazing people. And we're very lucky that we have international stars come through. You know, people like Judy Collins and Jonathan Edwards, and, you know, some great, great people come through, and I get a chance to talk to them using my journalistic credentials. So, and, you know, based on that, and who they are as a person sometimes is really important to me. I really like nice people. I like people who are very real.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've been actually disappointed sometimes. I've gone to see some performers who I've written about and walked away thinking, boy, I don't think I'll write about them again, because I won't mention any names.
Right, right.
But because you know, it's a small community. I don't want to.
Right.
But I usually write about people I admire and find the right things to say about them.
Well, I really appreciate time is precious, and when anybody takes the time out of their busy life with all the things that you do, I really appreciate you sharing, you know, all aspects of your world with us. Would you like to play something else? We've got a few minutes left.
Sure, sure. I think I'm gonna. This is a song. again, I didn't choose this, but I was very lucky to be born into a rather extraordinary family. And people in my ancestry have taken enormous risks and done wild and crazy things.
That's great.
This is a song about my great-great-grandfather. His name was the Reverend Eben Blatchley. And we were joking earlier, my legal name is Peter MacDonald Blatchley. You introduced me as Peter Alexander, and everything on here says Peter Alexander, because nobody can pronounce Blatchley, as you so aptly demonstrated.
I couldn't either.
So,
That's great.
But the Reverend Eben Blatchley was born in 1800. In 1865, at the very end of the Civil War, his oldest son had been captured by the Confederate soldiers. And he rode on horseback down south to try to find his son. And this is the song. The song I'm about to play tells the story of what happened to him. After the war, he sold everything he had and bought land outside of Kansas City, Kansas, and built from scratch the first university west of the Mississippi for former slaves and displaced Native Americans. And this song tells the story of what inspired him to make such a dramatic life change at the age of 65. So, I went down to Vicksburg in 1865, looking for my soldier son. I was hoping he was still alive. I came from Wiscasset, left my family farm to see if I could find and rescue him and bring him home with me. But rebel soldiers found me, they took me for a spy. They held a hasty trial right there and they sentenced me to die. Upon my horse they seated me beneath a hanging tree. They strung a noose around my neck so I died when my horse ran free. Oh Lord, save me, I heard my spirit cry. I am your humble servant, but I will surely die. This world's so full of suffering, I do all that I can. If you can get me out of here, I'll help my fellow man. Oh, a sudden calm came on my soul, my fear was set aside. I asked to say some final words before my time to die. Those tattered rebel soldiers, they were young but so grave. They bowed their heads with hats in hand and they let me have my say. Oh Lord, save us, I pray. This war has caused such strife. These poor young boys before me stand, about to take my life. You, Lord, know the stain they'll wear for this unholy deed. From the prison of the guilt they'll bear, they never will be free. Like a son looked up to me. With eyes in tears, he begged his friends that they should set me free. He's done no wrong, and his death won't serve us well. Listen to those words, he said, let's save our souls from hell. Those rebel soldiers shuffled round, you know they all look so ashamed. One by one they all agreed for my death they'd not be blamed. Off came the noose, my hands untied, the reins to me they gave, sent me to his castle instead of to my grave. Oh Lord, thank you, I cried in grateful song, in the company of the blessed ones, these southern boys belong. For you have taught them mercy while they're still so young. Now the promise I made to you, my work has just begun. I give my life in service to those this war has freed. I'll try to help the least of them that has the greatest need. I give my life in service to those this war has freed. I'll try to help the least of them that has the greatest need.
You make it look so easy. It's amazing. Wow.
Well, thank you.
That's incredible. Well, I wish you the best of luck on your adventures, and thanks so much for being here. Really.
The pleasure.
Okay. I'd like to thank the House of Logan for my attire today. They're great people, and they're right downtown Bath. If you have any questions or would like to have somebody interviewed, if there's someone out there that you'd like to see us interview, please give us a call or email, and we'll see what we can do. Thanks again.